Hey guys, my name is Matt Kendall. I'm a full-time photographer and videographer. Today I'm going to be showing you how you can set your white balance more accurately to help improve the quality of your photos and videos. Now, whether you're doing photography or video, the rules with white balance are going to be exactly the same. In front of me, I have some tools that you can use to help with white balance. But before we get into each of these items on the table, let me start off by talking briefly about white balance and why these tools exist in the first place. For starters, you and I are able to see something that is truly white in any environment because our eyes are just naturally able to do so. With cameras, however, it's different because cameras don't see white the same way we do. They rely on RGB, red, green, and blue, to identify colors. This is why if you've ever filmed or photographed in various places throughout the day, whether it's bright and sunny outside, cloudy, or you're even in a room full of that yellowish tungsten lighting, the camera is just going to perceive white differently, which is why we want to be able to understand white balance and how we can make sure it's accurate every time. Now, you can easily go into your white balance settings and select auto white balance, which works great in many of today's cameras, and it does all the work for you. But it's not always going to be accurate when you really need it to be, especially if you're photographing or filming an event that you're getting paid to do. If you're familiar with using Kelvin, you can go in and quickly adjust your white balance that way, but for the most accurate white balance, you'll want to use one of these nifty tools right here in front of me. They all serve the same purpose of helping you get your white balance, but many photographers and videographers are going to have their own preference of using one of these tools over the other. So I thought I'd explain and demonstrate each of them to you so you can decide what's going to work best for you. And all these items in front of me, not including the Canon Rebel, are going to be linked in the description down below for you to go out and purchase anytime you want. Let's start off with this guy right here. Online, you may see this exact one being called a white balance card, disc, reflector, but it's able to provide you white balance either way. On one side, you'll notice that it's gray, while on the other side, it's white. As crazy as it may seem, you can actually use either one of these sides to help you with your white balance. And the reason being is because this shade of gray gives you equal amounts of red, green, and blue. And since our camera sees everything through those same colors, that means it's going to set your white balance without any issue. You can also use this gray side to help you set your exposure as well, which I'll have to talk about in another video if you guys are interested. Let me know down in the comments if you'd like me to make that video. What's important to note is if you're going to buy one of these to adjust your exposure or white balance, is you need to purchase one where the shade of gray is listed as 18%. If it says anything else or doesn't specify, I wouldn't suggest buying it because any other shade of gray is liable to just adjust your white balance incorrectly. So make sure that it's an 18% gray before you buy one of these. Now, I'm going to be demonstrating everything in front of me using the Canon camera. The concept of how you use this card is going to be the same, but your camera may just be different in how it goes about creating that custom white balance for you. But with Canon, regardless of whether you're setting white balance for photos or video, the process is going to be exactly the same. You'll start by setting your shot the way you want it, so make sure you have all the lighting that you'll be using turned on. From there, you'll place this card in front of the camera where your subject will be. You can even have your subject just place the card directly in front of them like you see me doing right here. Set your ISO, shutter speed, and aperture the way you want it, and take the image. Now, go into the main menu of your camera and go to Custom White Balance. Select the image that you just captured, and from there, the camera will analyze the image you just took and give you a custom white balance that suits the environment you're going to be working with. Now, if this seems to be a bit of a hassle for you to do in camera, you also have the option of fixing your white balance in post-production. So to do that, just take a photo or a short video of the card where your subject will be, and then if you're like me and use Adobe for all of your edits, place the white balance eyedropper tool over the card and your editing software will help correct your white balance for you in post. One thing to keep in mind is you want this card to be close enough to the camera so that you can get a proper reading, but not so close that it doesn't have any of your light sources hitting it. If you have to, just zoom in on the card from your camera if it seems a bit far away to help your camera or editing software get a good read. Okay, now let's talk about this guy, the pocket-sized white balance card. The name fits it well because it is the size of a credit card and can easily fit in your wallet or camera bag, no problem. Because it is so small, this is typically something I would use if you're adjusting white balance where your subject is filling the entire shot, and you'll use it the same way we just did with this white balance disc, card, whatever you want to call it. I wouldn't try using this to set your white balance in camera unless you are able to zoom in close enough to the card for your camera or editing software to get an accurate reading. I do like how this card is small enough to fit in your pocket, but if it seems a bit too small to your liking, then I would suggest going with this first option or some larger white balance cards like these right here, which I'll also have linked down in the description below. So now that I've shown you how these two work, let me show you a different way of going about setting your white balance by introducing you to the Expo Disk. And the way you use it is going to be different than how you use these two cards right here. Instead of setting your white balance in the same direction that your light source is facing, like we've done with these cards, you'll set your white balance directly head on in the direction your camera is going to be positioned. So it's the complete opposite of what we've talked about. If I'm not making sense to you at all, let me just demonstrate to you for a quick moment how to use the Expo Disk. Let's pretend for just a moment that this Canon Rebel that I have in front of me is going to be the camera that I use to capture this camera angle you're watching me from right now. If I want to set my white balance using an Expo Disk, I'll take my camera and point it directly where I'm going to mount my camera for the shot. You'll adjust your camera settings so the image is properly exposed, and then place the Expo Disk directly in front of the lens like it's a lens cap, with the reflective side facing out, and snap your image. What the Expo Disk is doing is it's setting your white balance for you by using your light sources head on, which is why it has a reflective coating on one side and it's solid white on the other. One thing to note is when you're using an Expo Disk, you want to set your white balance in the exact spot that your subject is going to be placed. Otherwise, your white balance won't look right, and then you may end up having to retake everything later on, so just keep that in mind. If the Expo Disk may seem a bit confusing or complicated at first, it's actually been a very reliable way to set your white balance, because any white balance card you use will eventually begin to fade over time because it is a printed image. It can start to shift your white balance as your cards get older without you realizing it, but hopefully you'll be able to figure that out very quickly and replace them if you really do like the white balance cards. If you find that the Expo Disk is what you'll want to go with, I would also recommend purchasing a white balance card, because if for any reason you find that your white balance still looks off in post-production, having an image of the white balance card on hand before you start photographing or filming your shot can help you fix your white balance in post-production and save you a ton of hassle on retaking everything if it's not easily fixable in post. Alright, so chances are you've heard me talk long enough about these white balance tools in front of me, so let me show you some quick side-by-side comparison shots using each of these guys in front of me and see if you notice any differences. I'm going to be putting each of them to the test to see how well they perform against the auto white balance in my Canon EOS R. So let's see how this goes. You ready? 3, 2, 1, go. Now, of course, as you were able to notice, all of these clips were filmed in a controlled environment to help make sure you were able to see any noticeable differences between the auto white balance as well as the white balance cards in Expo Disk. Now, one thing to note is that all three of these white balance tools produce a slightly different result compared to the EOS R's auto white balance. So knowing that, it's mainly going to be up to you to decide which clips look the best to determine what's worth buying to help you set your white balance manually. Feel free to let me know down in the comments below which clips you liked and which one of these white balance tools you would prefer to use if you had to set your white balance manually. Okay, let's talk price for a minute, because I know it's something that is more important to many of you who may be interested in wanting to buy one of these. If you want something budget friendly, then I would suggest one of these balance cards right here. This one is currently roughly $10 to $20, and depending on which one you buy, some of them are able to actually collapse and come in a nice little storage pouch as well. The pocket-sized white balance card right here runs $20, but if you want something a bit larger and is not made of any type of fabric material, then you could easily be spending $15 to $120 depending on the brand, such as Neewer, which are more inexpensive, or Calibrite, which is going to be your top tier brand to go with if you want high quality color checking cards. For the Expo Disk, the top of the line ones will run you $50 or more. But again, while at first it might be the oddest one to use to set your white balance, it is going to be the most durable and will last you the longest time. I do personally use white balance cards when setting white balance, but the choice is completely up to you. Again, all of these items are linked down in the description below for you to go ahead and purchase whenever you want. And if you have any other questions, please feel free to reach out in the comments down below. All right, that's it for today's video. Hopefully I've taught you something today. And if you liked what you saw, please don't forget to like this video as well as subscribe to the channel. I'll be coming out with more content on both photography and video very soon. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I can't wait to see you in the next video.